quite a few Indians around then, and they'd make their yearly pilgrimages. I don't know if it was fall or spring, but they'd be going by heading north. We used to think they were going up to dig these what we called Indian potatoes. Whether they actually did or not, I don't know. The Indian potato is a little root, kind of a camas, I think is its real name. Blankets over their shoulders, and their horses and their little ones tied on back of them just the same way you see them nowadays in the rodeo. Except then it was part of their everyday life. He had quite a few horses on the ranch, and all the boys seemed to have their own special teams that they called theirs, although they actually all belonged to my dad. But John always drove a team he called Buster and Baldy. Edward had a team he called Tuffy and Whitey that he usually drove. Harry usually had a lighter weight team because Harry did most of the raking on the ranch. He raked the hay and the other boys, John and Edward, when he was there, would do the mowing. John liked to go to town because he liked to play cards, and that gave him an excuse to be there and go in the afternoon instead of having to work, and couldn't blame him for that. And sometimes instead of going to the movie, I'd play marbles all afternoon. And they played in an old dirty corner lot right next to what was then a Chinese restaurant. There was a big vacant lot, and there'd be dozens of kids there playing marbles, and I was a pretty good marble player. I used to have jars of these marbles. Harry and I were riding, old Dave down there riding double, and after school was over, I'd got on her while she was in the stall, and Harry was untying her and slipping the bridle on, but it's about the time he got ready to slip the bridle on, Dave whirled around and headed out the door and headed for home. Well, she galloped the whole way home. It was up the road and through the big gate and down the lane across the bridge and into the barn. The only thing you had to be careful of was going in the barn door. If you sat up real straight, you'd get your brains knocked out. Each of us seemed to sort of have jobs that we did. Mary always drove the pull-up on the stacker. Now, the stacker was a contrivance of pulleys and cables and a couple of big long arms with some a lattice work of teeth on the end of it to hold the hay, and you drove this team out, and the cables and pulleys pulled these arms up vertically. They went up in the air 15 feet or so. They threw the hay up on the stack. My dad always did the hay stacking. There had to be someone on the stack who could build it and spread the hay around and shape the stack as it got higher. And it was quite a dangerous thing being a stackerman, because you were always in danger of having this load of hay come up, be dumped right on top of you, or knock you off the stack, and that could happen and did happen. And then too, there was when the buck gathered up these shocks of hay and brought them into the stacker, there was always the danger of picking up rocks, because there were plenty of rocks out there on the ranch where we lived, and they were pretty good-sized boulders, and you were always in danger of being struck by one of them. And I remember one time my dad was stacking and I was driving pull-up, and one of these boulders came out and struck him on the head. This rock came down and split his scalp, and the blood just poured down over his face. And as I recall, it even broke his false teeth. It hit that hard on his head. You would have thought it would have killed him, but it didn't. And he wiped the blood away and went back to stacking hay, which shows you what kind of a tough man he was. In fact, I think our dad I'm quite sure he was tougher than any of his children were. Oh, he'd wrestled several. He wrestled in England before that, too. Our cousin Jack Birchall says over there they called him Leo the Lion. And he refereed around too, because he knew quite a bit about wrestling, and he was quite a strong man. He was strong because many times I've seen him stripped down and washing, and he had lots of muscles.